It is good to be gathered here again to worship. I was just standing there listening to you all sharing and thinking how appropriate that is. That is church. This is what church is. The family of God, followers of Jesus, gathering together, giving input, sharing what's on your heart, encouraging one another. That's what we do as church. That is church here. Today we're going to be concluding our series on the yoke of Jesus. I want to begin with a story about a prominent man in the late 1800s. His name was Tommy, and he was a fairly prominent man, and so one day a journalist was wanting to do a story about him and was interviewing him. And over the course of the interview, he kind of started pulling out this man's extreme dislike for sleep. He felt like sleep was overrated, it was unproductive, it was a crying shame that we as a species was still practicing this ancient practice from the cavemen, and discovered that this guy was working 20 hours a day over the course of years, for years at a time. So he had an extreme dislike for sleep, loved to work, I guess. And so he determined that he would set out and give his life to for the purpose of trying to invent a tool that could maybe help mankind overcome their need of sleep. And so he did. Tommy, or as most of us would know him as Thomas Edison, invented the tool of the light bulb. And ever since then, this changed the course of human history. Ever since then, we have been using this tool to allow us to run hither and yonder all hours of the day and night, chasing after the wind, if you will. Solomon wrote in Ecclesiastes, he wrote a fair amount about chasing after the wind. And what he meant by that was basically the futile pursuit of that which is not most important. Pursuing happiness, pursuing wealth, pursuing whatever it is that distracts us from that which is most meaningful. And so that light bulb changed the course of human history, I believe, and changed the way we do life. We no longer need to follow the rhythms that God set in place at creation, day and night. Now we can work and run around at all hours of the day. But we are in the final series, a sermon of this series, and we are calling this one Simplicity. I don't know if that's the right word to be using or not, but either way, that's what we're using here. But I just want to remind us, this is also, just like last week when we talked about Sabbath, this is also a wonderful gift from a loving Heavenly Father to His children. It is a gift from God to help us carry the burdens of life. But I want to make it clear here in this kind of a summary sermon. I think this kind of summarizes the others as well. So it ties in with the other sermons too. But in this summary sermon, I want to make it clear, though, that these S's that we had talked about are not the end all. These are just a means to a greater end. It is not just about slowing. It's not just about silence and solitude. It's not just about practicing the Sabbath, and it's not only about simplicity. We slow down because we want a deeper, meaningful connection with God. We practice silence and solitude because we want to make sure we can hear that still small voice of God. And we practice the Sabbath because we recognize it as a gift of a restful, grateful life of wonder and worship. And we want to receive that gift from God. And then today we practice simplicity. We're going to look at simplicity, but we don't practice simplicity just for the sake of simplicity. We practice simplicity because we believe that helps to remove the distractions that keep us from focusing on what matters most. But I like the way Joshua Becker said it. He described simplicity so well. He says it's the intentional promotion of the things we most value and the removal of everything that distracts us from them. So intentionally promoting that which has the most value and then removing anything that distracts us from that. So that's kind of what we want to look at here today. But once again, it's not just about simplicity. If it were just about simplicity, I would recommend that each one of you leave Dayspring and join either a monastery or the Amish, right? They both get it much better than any of us do. They get simplicity far better than we do. But it isn't just about simplicity. There's a greater cause, a greater purpose that we're pursuing here. So we're going to once again begin with creation, just like we did last week. At creation, there are some principles that God has set in place that I think apply very well here. And I'm going to begin by reading the first two verses of the Bible. Genesis 1, verses 1 and 2. It says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth." And then he goes on to explain a little bit what it looked like, what it was like there at that point. "The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters." So we're in the beginning here. It gives us a little bit of a description of what was in the beginning. The Hebrew word that he uses there is tohu wabohu, and that's kind of a fun word to say, and it can be translated as chaos. So basically when it says there was no form and it was really no order to it, it was chaos. I always would have, before I kind of pictured in the beginning there was nothing. But it would indicate here that there was stuff, but it had no form. It was just kind of out there, chaotically there. And there was no order. And so then at creation, God came on and brought order to that chaos. So order to chaos. And the reason that this is important, the reason that I want us to look at that here, is because God brings order to chaos. And he did that before he created man. Notice that happened before he placed us on the earth. And so I believe that God's plan is for man to be in a state of order and simplicity rather than chaos. And I believe also that the antithesis of simplicity is chaos. So these are opposing things here that we're looking at here. We've got chaos and we've got simplicity. Now this is the little picture you see up there is really a continuum. None of us are all the way on one side or the other, but we find ourselves somewhere on that continuum. And what we do and what we believe about God helps us move the needle one way or the other. Helps us move that little man on that chart there one way or another. So God's ideal setting for us was not chaos. That's why he brought order to that chaos before he created us and placed us on the earth. And so we're going to look at this a little bit more, a little bit deeper here. Now, I do believe that Adam was invited to take part in that as well. As an image bearer of God, we are actually invited to also be bringing order into chaos as well. Adam was invited to, God told Adam, there are all those animals out there. I want you to kind of bring some order to this and name them. And I'm picturing him doing more than just giraffe, sheep, goat, cat. Maybe he started a spreadsheet and included all the different parts of this animal. And then he sorted by column D and said, okay, over here, here's a list of all the ones that breathe air. Over here are the ones that breathe water. Here are the ones with hair. Here are the ones with scales. Here are the bigger ones, the smaller ones. And he's starting to bring order into this chaos of the animal kingdom. And then God also said, I want you to take charge of the rest of creation. Come and work the garden. Bring some order into this. And the word that would be used there would have to do with governing it or bringing order into this situation here. And so we get to be a part of bringing order into chaos. More of a simplicity rather than chaos. But as we know, this order did not last long, right? Chaos returned when sin came into the world. Man chose to reject God's plan for him, and now sin came into the world, bringing chaos back into the situation. And the reason that I believe that sin brings chaos is because it takes the focus off of what is most important. It hinders our ability for deep, meaningful relationship with God. And so sin takes us this direction rather than that direction. And in Genesis 11, just a couple chapters down in the book, we see kind of a really neat picture of what it looks like when we as humanity attempt to bring order without God in the picture. This is the story of the Tower of Babel. And what we see there is man trying to organize himself and to build his empire, and what happens is chaos. More chaos ensues as a result of that. And so God's desire for his children is not chaos, but simplicity and order, so that we can focus more on what matters most. But the question I want us to ask ourselves here is that since sin did come, since sin did ruin the order and the simplicity and our ability to focus on that relationship with God, since sin came in and ruined that, is all hope lost? Or is there a solution? Is there a solution to this problem of chaos in our world? Well, I believe there certainly is. And that God, just the way God had a solution at creation by bringing order into chaos, he once again had a solution. And that solution is an ancient Hebrew word called shalom. That is the word that is the antidote to chaos. It is the remedy to chaos. Shalom is God's plan to bring order and simplicity back into the chaos so that we can once again focus on what is most important, removing the chaos so that we can focus on what's important. Now, we're going to get into this word a little bit deeper in a minute here, but I want to first read a couple of verses in Isaiah that give us a picture of shalom coming as the remedy for this problem of chaos. God's remedy for the chaos in this world. Now, in these 7 verses that we're going to read, we're going to see a picture of kind of a reverting back to the kind of a picture of the chaos again, and then a picture of what this remedy can look like. And so let's begin in verse 1 of Isaiah 9. Isaiah 9, 1 through 7. It says, "But there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish. In the former time he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the latter time he has made glorious the way of the sea, the land beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. You have multiplied the nation, you have increased its joy. They rejoice before you as with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divide the spoil. For the yoke of his burden and the staff of his shoulder, the rod of his oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For every boot of the tramping warrior in battle tumult, and every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire." And now here's the key verse here. He says, "For unto us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace," Prince of Shalom. "Of the increase of his government and of peace, Shalom, there will be no end, on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and to uphold it with justice and with righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of hosts will do this." So there was a picture there of the darkness and the chaos, and then what this shalom would bring. We see a picture of the reality of creation that had reverted back to darkness and chaos. But just like at creation, there was a remedy. God had a plan to bring light and order back into the story. He's wanting to move that needle back over towards simplicity and away from chaos so that his children could focus on what mattered most, relationship with him. Because remember, these are principles that God has put in place so that we can better carry our burdens. This is a principle of God because he cares about us, not just because he doesn't want us to have lots of stuff, but he knows what is best for us. And so we do well to pay attention to that. But how can a child, a son, a baby, be this remedy, this antidote to the chaos? Well, there's a clue in the word shalom, and I love that. I don't know Hebrew at all, but I have found that Hebrew is a pictorial language, and so it's really fun to study these Hebrew words and to see how that each letter actually is a picture and has a definition or a meaning of its own, and then together the word then has a bit of a story kind of that tells the deeper meaning of the word. And so let's look at this word shalom here and see what the deeper meaning might be here in this word that God seems to think is the solution to chaos. God sent the Prince of Shalom to bring us peace. Okay, so we need to remember that they start by reading on the right and then move to the left. So the first letter there is a picture of teeth, and it brings out the idea of teeth to destroy. Next, we have the letter of a shepherd's staff, and that brings out the idea of authority. Thirdly, we see a nail. It's like an iron nail or a peg, and that one is kind of like connecting two things together, like a nail would connect two boards together or something. So it brings out the idea of connection with. And then the fourth and final letter in the word shalom is water, or it would often be used as like a storm or chaos. And so as we look at this word and the pictures, the different pictures of each of the letters, it brings out the idea of the teeth to destroy the authority connected with chaos. Isn't that neat how that God's solution to the chaos of our world is the Prince of Shalom, the ability to crush and destroy the power and authority of the chaos of the world around us. We often think, we hear the word peace and we think 60s, everybody happy and just getting along, and the songs that came out of the 60s, and that's not at all the picture here of this word peace. It actually brings out the idea of conflict and fighting against chaos to bring back that simplicity and the ability to focus on God once again. And so I love that the promised Messiah that God would send into the world to bring us peace actually means the Prince of Shalom is going to come and crush the authority of chaos so that we can focus once again on relationship with God. Get rid of that stuff that keeps us from focusing in on God. Jesus would bring light into the darkness again. He would bring joy into the sadness, and he would bring order into the chaos. And we see that carried on even after Jesus had ascended, because in Paul's letters to the church, almost every letter he opens with I wish for you as a church, I wish you peace, I wish you shalom, I wish you the ability as a church to be able to get rid of that stuff that is hindering you from your focusing on God, what matters most. That's what I wish for you. Grace and peace be with you, as he starts almost all of his letters. I pray that you would have the ability to crush that chaos so that you can focus in on what really matters. That's why simplicity matters, not just so that we can have fewer stuff or we can be more like the Amish or like the monks, but there is a deeper purpose for it so that we can focus in on what matters most. And so if Jesus is the Prince of Shalom that brings us this peace, then shouldn't we pay some attention to what he had to say about some of this, some of his words? Absolutely. So I want us to look next at just a couple of little verses in the New Testament, in the Gospels, from Jesus' words to his followers about this. And so we begin in Matthew 6. It's in the Sermon on the Mount. He talks a lot about this in the Sermon on the Mount. We could have pulled lots of scriptures in there, but I'm just grabbing a few. He talks about how you can't serve God and money. And he talks about giving generously to the poor. And then he says here, therefore do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? And then he goes on with some other things, and then he brings in, seek first the kingdom of God. This is Jesus' words to help us eliminate the chaos in our lives, to focus in on that simple, basic food, drink, clothes, shelter, the very basic things that we need. Then we look in Luke 12:15. This one here is also just a real key, some instructions from God. Do we actually believe, though, that Jesus understood what we're going through? Does this even apply? Did he understand that our Social Security would be a mess by the time we're ready to retire, though? Did he get that? Did he understand inflation? Does this actually apply to our lives today? Do we really believe that Jesus' words can help us do life better? Luke 12:15, and he said to them, take care, be on your guard against all covetousness, wanting other people's stuff, really. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Wow. It does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Really? There's more to life than accumulating lots of stuff? But stuff is fun, right? We love that. We've been taught that one click and it's on your porch in one day or 2 days, right? How fun is that? Well, Jesus said that's not what it's all about. And then he goes on. I want us to look at a parable that he told. He told the parable about the soils, how that a sower went forth and he was spreading seed, and how that there were different things that got in the way of the fruitfulness of those seeds. And then his disciples were asking, what does it even mean? And then he was explaining to them what this parable meant. And in verse 22 then, he says, as for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. Fruitfulness is the key here, I think. That's a pretty important piece, being fruitful in the kingdom. And it says the cares of the world and deceitfulness of riches hinder that. Hinder what is most important. So we're asked to get rid of what hinders what is most important, right? And so let's look at this a little bit more. What is Jesus actually saying? He's saying very clearly that he believes that riches are deceitful. Riches tell a lie, or our pursuit of riches maybe, our pursuit of happiness tells a lie. It's making us think something that isn't true. It's making us think that happiness and fulfillment are going to come with more stuff and money. If I can accomplish more in this realm, then I will be happier. And so materialism and the pursuit of happiness, I'm here to tell you, does not move the needle the right direction on our little chart up there. And it's kind of ironic that 2 days after the biggest shopping day of the year is when this happens. I didn't time it that way on purpose. I was literally at my desk doing my final studying for this when everybody else was out Black Friday shopping. And I wanted to go to Home Depot and just see. That's the most fun place of all, by the way. So many things for $9.99 and under. Just a tape measure, a square, a this, a that, It's so much fun. And I stayed home. I didn't go. I went Saturday then, but... Anyway, it was ironic to me that while I'm studying this is the biggest shopping day of the year, because we have become a culture of shoppers. That's really what we've become. We've been lied to and made to believe that one more purchase is going to make me happy. I am going to feel better about myself. Everything is going to be better if I could just I have a gas grill and a charcoal grill, but if I had a pellet grill yet, that would be perfect, right? Then I could... We've been lied to. And I think the advertising of our day has shifted a lot from the 50s or 60s maybe. Back in the day, ads that you would see were about it tastes better, it lasts longer, it fulfills a need in your life, it's healthier. Those were kind of the focuses of the ads. Now today, instead, it's this product is going to make you happy. right? You see a picture of a new car, and all the kids are in the back seat, strapped in, maybe singing a song together or blessing each other, and everybody's smiling. Nobody's saying, I need to go potty. Are we almost there yet? Johnny hit me, whatever. Nobody's arguing. So if I could just buy this new car, my kids would all be happy the whole way to Florida and back, right? And it's a lie. It's propaganda. They want you to buy your product. They don't care about your happiness. They want you to think that it will make you happy if you buy their product. So we all kind of know that, right? We know that this stuff is a lie, and yet we fall for it. We have fallen for this lie, and we've fallen into the trap of materialism. Now, back in 1956, Richard Nixon, at that time he was the vice president of the United States. He was campaigning for someone in his party, and he made the statement that because of the technology advancements that his party had made over the last few years, he was convinced that within a short amount of time, we would be working only 3 or 4 hours in the forenoons, and then we'd be golfing in the afternoon, and robots would be taking care of all the mundane and hard tasks for us. And our lives would be so simple, our lives would be better as a result of the technological advancements that his party had brought to our society. And you know what? He had a good point. He had really good reasoning behind that argument that he made. Because we were becoming so much more efficient, there's no reason in the world why we shouldn't be able to accomplish just as much in a few hours as we've been accomplishing before. Why shouldn't our lives be so much simpler now? The reason that it hasn't happened, the reason that it doesn't work that way is because we have decided that with a little bit more abilities, with a little bit more time, we are going to get more stuff. And so we are just going to purchase more instead. We want more toys. And that's why we're not willing to just simply work less and make do with less. Now, I'm not here preaching that we should all work less and have less and just sit around doing nothing. I don't know what the answer is, really. But what I do know is that we have fallen for the lie that another toy is going to make me happier. Now, a lot of the prominent businessmen of the day and the leading financial guys in the 1900s, soon after the war actually, were convinced that this was going to be a problem for them if we continue down the path that we were going. And so Paul Mazur of the Lehman Brothers, back in 1927, wrote in the Harvard Business Review, and he said this. He said, "We must shift America from a needs to a desires culture. People must be trained to desire, to want new things even before the old have been entirely consumed. We must shape a new mentality in America. Man's desires must overshadow his needs." Because they knew that if we can get people wanting more, even if they don't need it, then they will do anything to pursue it. They will work long and hard. They will do our bidding to follow that. And that's what we need to make our society strong again. Now, most of you, or some of you at least, probably know what happened to the Lehman Brothers about, 12, 15 years ago. They crashed. They were one of the largest investment bankers in the world, or at least in America, and they crashed. They went bankrupt around 2008, I believe. But anyway, that mentality is what so many of us are pursuing today, and it gets in the way of our ability to focus in on what matters most. And that was not God's plan for humanity. God has a plan for us. God's desire for you and I to help us carry the burdens of life is not more stuff. It is not chaos, but it is simplicity and it's order. That was his plan at the beginning, and it's still his plan for us today. And so what is the answer, though? What is the answer to moving the needle, moving the little man from chaos over towards simplicity? I don't know exactly what it looks like in your life and what it what's going to move you towards simplicity. But I think we do need to start by actually believing that Jesus knew what he was talking about. Looking in the Gospels and reading Jesus' words about materialistic, our pursuits of happiness, our pursuits of more stuff. Believing what Jesus had to say rather than the ads that we see daily. But something we do also need to understand is, I want to make clear, though, what simplicity is not. It's not an architectural design. It's not just, straight lines, tall ceilings, whatever, kind of more of an empty space. It's not just an architectural design, and it's not poverty. Poverty does not equal simplicity. Poverty is no fun either, okay? I'm just here to tell you that's not the answer. And so that's not what we're talking about, and it's also not organization. It's not just going and buying 20 tubs at Home Depot and a Sharpie, putting all your stuff in tubs and putting them up in the attic so you can find them. No, that's also not simplicity. That's probably the opposite of it, actually. So what is it? How can we maybe make this practical? How can we do something to bring about a little bit more order and peace and simplicity into our lives so that we can focus more on what is most important? I'm going to list 7 things really quickly here. Not all of these are going to be what you will personally choose, but there may be 1 or 2 that you can take from this list that might help you. Number 1, before each major purchase, calculate what the true cost is in terms of time and money. I want a new motorcycle. What is that really going to cost me? I'm going to need to ride it, so it's going to cost me a lot of time, maybe away from my family. I'm going to need to buy insurance. I'm going to need to put gas in it. I'm going to need to buy fun little gadgets to put on it. Maybe it is worth that. After you have evaluated the true cost of the item, maybe it becomes worth it. Maybe you see it is worth it. Maybe it isn't. But evaluate that before each major purchase. Number 2, never impulse buy. Take a moment, take a day, take a week to think about it and figure out, is it really what I need? Don't use the one-click method where it's on your porch tomorrow. Number 3, share and borrow things. Dave Mast is saying, yeah, you certainly have figured that one out. I don't own a trailer because Dave Mast owns a trailer. So I'm actually saying that we as a family of God ought to do more of that. Now, I want to do my part and own some things that you can borrow as well. Maybe I buy a leaf blower so that you don't need to, and we swap it back and forth. But I think there's some value in that. It shows us that we recognize our own limitations. I can't do everything on my own. I need my brother and sister. And it keeps us from having to pursue, working all those extra long hours so we can make enough money so we can have that extra toy. But borrow and share back and forth. That's one way we can maybe simplify our lives a bit. Number 4, give things away that you no longer need. Don't stick it up in your attic. Somebody could probably use it. If you're not going to use it for the next year or 2, give it away. Find somebody that needs it. Number 5, enjoy things without owning them. Now you say, well, we're not supposed to steal, though. That's not what I'm saying. How about the library? A library is a beautiful place with soft chairs, great Wi-Fi, thousands of books. Go and enjoy it. It doesn't cost you a thing. You get a free library card. It's a great thing to use. Parks, city parks are fantastic. You take your kids there, let them play on slides and swings and stuff that you can't afford for your own backyard. There's lots of things in our country here that we can enjoy without owning them. Beautiful architecture, maybe. Maybe you love to see beautiful buildings. Buy a cup of coffee and they'll let you sit in their building for hours and enjoy their nice designs. 6, learn to enjoy simple pleasures. Learn to enjoy simple pleasures. Taking a walk in the woods. Whatever it may be for you. There's simple pleasures that we can enjoy that can bring simplicity into our lives rather than chaos. And lastly, learn to recognize the lies in advertising. It's propaganda. They're trying to feed you a lie. And learn to listen to the words of Jesus instead of the advertising. And so in conclusion, I want us to think about how we're going to pursue simplicity so that we can have more of what matters most and less of the things that distract us from those things that matter most. Now, I mentioned, of course, relationship with God. That is one that matters most, right? But some other things to think about that do matter a lot, and that is time, peace, financial freedom, relationships, mental clarity, time to pray. These are all things that have value, deep value. And what are we going to remove from our lives so that we can have more of those types of things? And as I said earlier, this kind of sums up the whole series that we've been talking about. All of these things that we've been talking about are God's way of caring for us. Because when we really do live by these principles that God has blessed us with, given us as gifts for us to do life better in a more relaxed and enjoyable and joy-filled way, we're honoring God that way. And so my challenge to you, or my plea to you, is put on Jesus' yoke of shalom. Put on that yoke. It was crafted specifically for you. It fits your shoulders just right. It's not too heavy and not too light. And it was crafted to help you carry the burden, whatever the burden is that you have in your life. And so I don't know what that will look like for you. That is for you to determine. It may take some work. It may take some time for you to process through that. What matters most for you? Let's pray. Father, thank you so much for your word and your principles that you've given us as a way of doing life better, of carrying the burdens of life, Lord. We recognize that your words are true, and they are for our good. They are not just to hinder us, not just to hold us back, but they are to help us live life the way you intended, in an orderly, simpler life, Lord, not a life of chaos. That's why you fixed chaos before you put us in it. So thank you for that, Lord. But I pray that you would give each one of us here the wisdom, the courage, the strength, the ability to put these principles into practice in whatever way you want us to, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.